Tonight, we're covering two major cases in the news. The first case is about Cindy Rodriguez-Singh, a Texas mother accused of murdering her 6-year-old son, Noel, who vanished in 2023. After months on the run and even being added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list, she was finally captured in India and extradited back to the U.S. The second case centers on former Bay Area news anchor Frank Somerville, who's accused of assaulting his 20-year-old daughter, an incident he later detailed in a Facebook post before deleting it just hours later. Let's get into it.
Breaking news right here at 11. The mother of a missing Everman 6-year-old is now one of the most wanted fugitives in America. This is a major development in a case that has haunted North Texas for nearly 3 years.
About a month after Cindy Rodriguez-Singh was put on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, federal authorities announced her arrest on Wednesday.
She fled the United States of America years ago and was not seen by anyone for 2.5 years.
The FBI director announced that Singh was recently arrested in India.
Hi, I'm Katie Ring, and this is Crime House Daily, your weekday true crime companion. We follow the cases making headlines now, where justice is still unfolding. This is a First Watch episode bringing you today's biggest crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Crime House Daily so you never miss an episode. This episode discusses active criminal cases and breaking news. The information we share is based on what's publicly available at the time of recording and may change as new evidence comes to light. We aim to inform, not to decide guilt or innocence. So everyone mentioned is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Before getting into today's main cases, I want to bring up another case that the Crime House Daily team is watching closely. Officials have announced that they arrested someone in connection with the Palisades fire that ravaged through Los Angeles County this January. The man arrested is 29-year-old Jonathan Rinderknecht, and he's charged with maliciously starting the Palisades fire through arson. Authorities say that among the evidence against him is an image he generated on ChatGPT that depicts a burning city. A lighter with his DNA on it was also collected. The wildfire took 12 people's lives and burned over 23,000 acres. It's been described as one of the most destructive fires in LA's history. As of this recording, this is what has been released to the public. It's an ongoing investigation, and we'll be sure to keep you posted on what we learn at Crime House 24/7. For our first case today, we're diving into the story of Cindy Rodriguez-Singh, a mother accused of murdering her 6-year-old son, Noel Alvarez Rodriguez. In 2023, Cindy told investigators that Noel, who had several disabilities, was living with his biological father in Mexico. But a few days later, she fled the country, first to Turkey, then to India. Last month in September, the authorities finally caught up with her and arrested her before extraditing her back to the U.S. As of this recording, Cindy Rodriguez-Singh is being held in custody on a $10 million bond as she awaits her trial. Let's get into it. Cindy Rodriguez gave birth to her son Noel on February 2, 2017, in the town of Everman, Texas, just outside of Fort Worth. His father had been deported to Mexico, so he's not around to help raise Noel or any of his other siblings. When Noel's born, Cindy has 7 other children. 3 of them live with her parents, but Noel needs a lot of support. Support he doesn't end up getting. From the beginning of Noel's life, he's struggled with a number of difficult health problems. Noel suffered from a chronic lung disease that required regular oxygen treatment. Additionally, he had a limp, visual impairment, speech delay, and developmental disabilities. Growing up with a host of demanding health issues is hard enough, even in a loving home. But apparently, Cindy's house is anything but. Cindy allegedly accused her son of being evil and possessed by a demon, and regularly abused him, physically and emotionally. Because of his disabilities, Noel needed to wear a diaper, and Cindy resented having to change him. So she often withholds food and water, and some witnesses even reported that she beat him with her keys when she caught him drinking water. Cindy also keeps Noel isolated from other children, even his siblings. His room is in the shed in the back of the house they rented. Noel grew up malnourished, isolated, and neglected, and wasn't the only one of Cindy's kids she allegedly mistreated. In 2020, Cindy was arrested for driving under the influence for drunkenly crashing her car into a pole, while 2 of her children were in the car. Since it's a repeat offense, Cindy is put on a 10-year probation and her children, including Noel, are placed in foster care. Thankfully, Noel finally finds a support network in his foster home. For the first time in his life, he's being fed and loved in a way that he should be. Patricia Paris, his foster mother, described him as lovable and always in a happy mood. Patricia said that Noel just wanted to watch cartoons, play with his friends, and live a happy life, like any other kid. But when Cindy regains custody of her children in December 2021, all of that is allegedly taken away. Cindy had recently gotten married to Arshdeep Singh, a man originally from India. She gets pregnant again, this time with twins, and becomes even more neglectful with Noel. By July 2022, Cindy stops taking Noel to his necessary doctor's appointments to treat his lung disease. And instead, she allegedly asks one of her friends if she can borrow one of their children and take them to the appointment instead to pass him off as Noel. She doesn't enroll Noel in school either, even though she legally had to. But she can't keep him out of sight forever. She had to bring him along when she gave birth to her twins in October 2022. And when the hospital staff saw him, they noticed how malnourished Noel looked. Tragically, this is the last time anyone outside the house saw him alive. Shortly after, in early November 2022, Cindy applied for passports for herself and all of her children except Noel. A few months later, Cindy's husband uses the refund from his tax return to pay for a rush job on a concrete patio in the backyard, even though they don't own the house they lived in. By the spring of 2023, nobody had seen Noel for months. And on March 20th, 2023, a welfare check was conducted on Cindy's home. They asked where Noel was, and Cindy told them that she had sent him to live with his biological father in Mexico so he could get the care he needed. But when investigators look into it, there's no record of Noel crossing the border. They even tracked down his father, who says he has never even met Noel. And the authorities aren't the only ones looking for him. Cindy's family is concerned about Noel's whereabouts as well. When her mother, who was still raising 3 of Noel's siblings, asked about him, Cindy told her that she sold Noel to a woman in a grocery store parking lot. Cindy clearly knew the walls were closing in around her and told her sister she was scared that she was going to lose custody of her other children. And on March 22nd, 2023, 2 days after investigators came to the house, Cindy and her husband took action. First, he threw out a carpet that had been in the shed where Noel lived, even though the rest of the house was still filled with other trash. He also steals $10,000 from his employer and deposits $8,000 of it into the bank. And then they run. On March 22nd, 2023, Cindy Rodriguez-Singh and her husband, Arshdeep Singh, packed up their 6 children who live with them, bought one-way plane tickets, and drove to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport in Texas. From there, they flew to Istanbul, Turkey, before taking a flight to Arshdeep's home country of India. But Cindy is on the U.S. authorities' radar, and no matter how far she goes, they're determined to catch up with her. In the aftermath of Cindy's flight from the country, investigators still weren't sure about her son Noel's whereabouts. On March 25th, they issued an Amber Alert for him. And on March 30th, they followed it up with a felony warrant for Cindy and Arshdeep for abandoning and endangering a child. At the same time, investigators began interviewing the people in Cindy's life for any clues that could help them figure out what happened to Noel. Cindy's mom told them the story about selling Noel to the woman at a grocery store, but the police ultimately can't find any evidence to support the story. And as they collect more evidence, it became clear that Noel isn't just missing. He's almost certainly dead. Investigators searched Cindy's home for any evidence that might lead them to Noel's body. They find the carpet Arshdeep threw out, and cadaver dogs smell human remains on it. The dogs also mark the newly paved patio. The contractor told investigators that Arshdeep had specifically instructed him to make one part of the patio thicker than the rest. But when the patio was demolished, Noel's body wasn't there, creating a tragic mystery the community struggles to understand. Patricia Paris, who had been Noel's foster mother, was deeply heartbroken by Cindy's actions. She said, quote, "He didn't deserve what happened to him. He overcame a lot of obstacles that he had to face in life. We want justice for Noel." And the authorities are determined to get him that justice. Cindy is charged with capital murder, 2 counts of injury to a child, and 1 count of abandoning without intent to return. But finding her won't be easy. FBI agents coordinate with their counterparts in India to try and track Cindy and her family down. The investigation continues without much progress for over a year. On July 1st, 2025, Cindy is added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, and that's when the search for her picks up steam. About 45 days after being added to the most wanted list, New Delhi police arrest Cindy and hand her over to the FBI. On August 20th, 2025, the Bureau announces that she is being extradited back to the U.S. to stand trial. The next day, she's booked into Tarrant County Jail, where as of this recording, she's being held on a $10 million bond. Sadly, Noel's body has still not been found. But despite this horrific story, Noel's light continues to shine on. In November 2023, a year and a half after Cindy fled the country, a new playground in Noel's old neighborhood was named after him. The sign at the front shows him smiling in a pair of sunglasses. As for Cindy, she is currently awaiting trial. There's no official update yet on how she's going to plead, but we'll be watching for any updates and we'll be sure to bring you any major developments. For today's second case, we're digging into another story of a parent with a troubling past. 67-year-old former Bay Area TV newsman Frank Somerville was arrested in September 2025 for allegedly assaulting his 20-year-old daughter, Callie. Earlier this month, he pleaded not guilty to different charges from back in 2024 when he allegedly attacked his girlfriend. And these aren't his only legal problems. So let's rewind a bit, back to when Frank first made his mark at the KTVU news station in San Francisco. Frank Somerville started as the co-anchor of KTVU's morning news in 1992, after first working at the station as a college intern a decade earlier. Over the years, he became a beloved figure around the Bay Area and eventually moved to the 5 p.m. news slot in 2005, and then the coveted 6 p.m., 10 p.m. news slot in 2008. Frank had a great reputation for his devotion to good reporting and his family. As the time goes by, Frank helps turn the KTVU evening news into a local powerhouse. They have the highest rating among news channels in the Bay Area by far. But everything starts to change around June of 2021. By then, Frank and his wife of 25 years, Donna, had been separated for about a year, and apparently Frank's behavior is spiraling out of control as a result. On the evening of June 4th, 2021, Frank is reading off the teleprompter during a broadcast, but something's off. He's slurring his speech, getting words wrong, and just appears to be completely out of it. Things are so bad he leaves the broadcast only 15 minutes in, and his co-anchor has to finish the show alone. Frank says his problems came from an Ambien he'd mistakenly taken right before he went on air. But a few days later, Frank announces that he's taking a leave of absence from the station to focus on his health. He goes to rehab for the real cause of his problems at work: alcohol abuse. After 9 weeks of treatment, he goes back to work in August of 2021. Unfortunately, he hasn't overcome his demons, and Frank's issues are only just beginning. In August 2021, Frank Somerville returned to his job at KTVU after his stint in rehab, but things aren't the same as they used to be. He and his producers begin to clash with each other, and Frank is disciplined in early September 2021 for making Facebook posts criticizing a new Texas abortion law and speaking out against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in a post memorializing 9/11. The station warns him about making statements that are too controversial and tells him not to post any more on Facebook. but Frank refuses to stand down, and he soon becomes embroiled in another controversy. This time, it's about the disappearance of Gabby Petito, which is all over the news at the time. Gabby was reported missing on September 11, 2021, and her remains were found a week later in Wyoming. A lot of coverage around this time is focused on details of Gabby's travels with her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, who ultimately killed her. The story is all over the media, including at Frank's station, KTVU. And it really is a chilling case. But there's some criticism about how much coverage the story received nationally, especially when compared to how little coverage the disappearances of women of color get, a phenomenon referred to as missing white women syndrome. Frank has those criticisms as well, and it's even more personal because his daughter is Black, and he makes his feelings known at work. Frank openly complains to his superiors at KTVU that Gabby Petito's case is taking up too much airtime compared to local stories, and asks if he can comment on racial justice as part of his reporting. That request is denied, but Frank decides to do it anyway. On September 23, 2021, he adds additional comments into the broadcast script. His producers removed them before the show went live, but Frank gets in trouble anyways. The next day, on September 24th, KTVU suspended Frank indefinitely for disobeying his producers. For the second time in just a few months, Frank is away from his job, this time for sticking to his convictions. Around this time, Frank's drinking becomes more severe. In November 2021, he told the Bay Area news group that KTVU hasn't contacted him, and he probably won't be anchoring for the station ever again. His drinking problem continues to escalate, and on December 30th, 2021, Frank is caught on video rear-ending an Audi in his Porsche before fleeing the scene and crashing into a pole. When the police arrive, they find that Frank's BAC is far over the legal limit, and he's arrested for a DUI. Frank claims that he'd been drinking because he wasn't able to spend time with his family for the holidays, and his arrest doesn't make the situation any better. Just a week later, his wife filed for divorce. Soon after, Frank's time at KTVU officially comes to an end when they choose not to renew his contract. Things just keep getting worse for Frank from there. About a year and a half later, on June 5th, 2023, he's at his parents' house in Berkeley, California to help support his elderly father. But Frank, who'd arrived drunk, gets into an argument with his family and allegedly threatens his dad. Frank's brother confronts him about it, and the two get into a physical altercation. He refuses to leave, so his family calls the police, and Frank is arrested for violating his probation from his DUI arrest, public intoxication assault, and making criminal threats. When he's released from custody after posting bail early the next morning, he goes back to his parents' house to get his car. Then he goes back again to get his phone. He's so disruptive, the police are called back to the house, where they find Frank drunk in his car. Just a day after being booked for public intoxication, he's arrested for another DUI. He would ultimately be charged with reckless driving and violating his probation. For those offenses, Frank is sentenced to perform community service projects for the Alameda County Sheriff's Office rather than serve jail time. In a 2023 interview with Cron News in San Francisco, Frank is apologetic and ready to turn the page on a dark time in his life. He says that he'd quit drinking completely, entered an Alcoholics Anonymous program, and is living in a sober facility. But that glimmer of hope doesn't last. On November 19th, 2024, Frank was at home with his girlfriend, Elaine Coleman. He had allegedly been drinking all day, and Elaine thinks he's having a mental breakdown, so she starts recording him, which Frank doesn't like. Allegedly, he lunges at Elaine, tackling her to the ground. Thankfully, someone else is in the house and they intervene. Frank is taken into custody once again. Afterward, Elaine, who is now Frank's ex-girlfriend, files a domestic violence restraining order against him in civil court, and as of this recording, the case remains ongoing. After these incidents, Frank tries to get his life back together. He goes back to rehab and gets sober again in January 2025. But 9 months later, on September 15th, 2025, he's once again arrested for an incident involving his family. According to Frank, his now 20-year-old daughter, Callie, arrived at his house unannounced around 4 a.m., going through what he calls marijuana withdrawal. He claims her bank account is overdrawn and that she demands he give her money before grabbing his phone. In this version of events, when Callie goes to leave, Frank grabs her in a bear hug as she tries to punch and scratch at him. He says he put one hand on her neck to calm her down. However, according to the police report, Frank allegedly slammed Callie to the ground and grabbed her by the neck so forcefully she nearly passed out. To tell his side of the story, Frank turns back to Facebook. He says that he wasn't drunk at the time of the altercation. He has apparently been sober for 9 months. He writes, quote, "I love my daughter more than anything in the world. I would never deliberately try to hurt her, but bad things happen in battle." I have to say, calling this a battle is a poor choice of words. But Frank deletes the post just about a few hours later. Afterward, Frank is arrested on suspicion of battery with serious bodily harm. He's released on bail, and as of this recording, the Alameda County District Attorney's Office is considering whether to file formal charges against him. His attorney, in a statement to the press, said the incident was a family matter and that their hope was that it could be resolved outside of court. In the meantime, the authorities have finally charged him for the incident with his ex-girlfriend Elaine back in November 2024. Just a few days ago, he pleaded not guilty to those charges, and the judge is allowing him to stay out of custody while the case proceeds, as long as he stays away from the alleged victim. It's a stunning fall from grace for someone who was so beloved in his community. We'll be watching this case closely and bring you all the major updates. What did you think of today's cases? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. See you next time. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Crime House Daily and follow us on social media at Crime House 24/7 for real-time updates, because the pursuit of justice never stops.